If you're a potential Arsenal manager, we don't know who it's going to be. Maybe they've made absolutely no approaches for guys just yet. They want to get through this season and see can they win the Europa League, etc. Maybe the guy they want isn't available as yet. But if you were and you're watching that game today and you see all the young guys in there, Maitland-Niles, Iwobi, they had Reece Nelson, Willock came off the bench. They had a 20-year-old Greek defender making his debut for the club today. I mean, can you argue that there is massive potential in this squad? And if you buy 3 or 4 really good players, get a bit more out of the likes of Granit Xhaka, for example, from Danny Welbeck, from Mkhitaryan, that you have the makings of a squad that has the potential to be very, very good.
Well, yeah, you could make that argument, but that argument has been made against Arsenal for the last 10 or 15 years. Yes, I know that is maybe one criticism that I and maybe many others would have had of Arsene Wenger and on his developmental side on players and what it actually has done with the likes of maybe Theo Walcott off the top of my head, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, players that have moved on. And gone on to maybe better things, or certainly maybe not Walcott, but certainly gone on and maybe looked players at different clubs when they have moved on. I think in relation to the current squad, as you say, maybe in relation to today, yes, they've got several players that have potential, but it is just potential. I think there could be a manager that comes in and really instills discipline in this squad, or tries to instill discipline. And I think with what they've got and the mentality that's been around this squad for such a long time, they might rebel against that. There might be clashes. So it's going to take someone really strong to go against what Wenger has done for such a long time here. And that's maybe the core of the manager that when coming into this place, that's what he needs to do. I think because there's been an element of this club as it's easy going, we can get away with it, we can do what we want. I think there's got to be a manager that comes in now and has really got to maybe rock the boat a little bit and upset 1 or 2 people. That's what I think this club needs more than anything else.
It's all been carrot with Arsene Wenger and clearly nowhere near enough stick over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we always hear that professional footballers love to be coached, love to be guided. They love to know exactly what their role is in the field because that makes mentally their life a bit easier. But if you're just told to go out, just go and express yourself and I've got confidence in you, maybe you can slip into those bad habits. So maybe this group of Arsenal players, maybe a Granit Xhaka, who drew our ire several times and indeed on TV today drew the ire of Graham Souness for his role in the first United goal. Maybe someone like him can be this kind of top-class midfield player that Arsene Wenger thought he was buying, but clearly he's being let down from a defensive point of view more than anything else.
Yeah, I think he's certainly a player more than ever, or more than any, I should say, that would need coaching. He needs to be shown the mistakes he's making defensively. I think he has got ability. I'm not necessarily in agreement with you that he can be top class. I don't know if he's got that in him. I've not seen it from him in any game that I've seen him. He's got a good left foot, he can shoot, he's a decent enough passer, but I don't think he's top class. If I'm looking at it in relation to some of the top class midfielders that are in the Premier League and across Europe at the moment. But I think, I don't know, it pains me to say, I think, with Arsenal, because I think we all know the style of football, the attractiveness that they've shown over the years. But there is something clearly lacking within the club, and that comes from the manager. The manager, as you say there, he's been quite content just to say, I tell you what, go and do what you want. But look at the Arsenal side that had success in the early days, real steel in the side, and maybe that was there before he took over, that steel within that side beforehand. But I think you've got to get back to an Arsenal side that has the flair, that has the characteristics of a really good attacking side, but also that steeliness, that real wanting to win matches, maybe ugly at times as well, that real desire to go and work for each other. I don't think that's been very evident of Arsenal for far too long now.
So finally, I'll put you on the spot now. I think today was the 26th time that Arsene Wenger has brought an Arsenal team to Old Trafford. Out of all the moments that we've seen, huge moments, some explosive moments, title-winning moments, what was the standout one for you in terms of Arsene Wenger's rivalry with Manchester United?
Well, I think it would be the Overmars and Wiltord goals. That's the thing that sticks in my mind. Watching Premier League over the years, Arsenal coming here, winning at Old Trafford and winning the Premier League title and again, I'm talking about real character, players with real character. Overmars had so much ability, but he had character. Wiltord at the time as well, character and ability. Throughout that Arsenal side during that era, they had unbelievable talent, yet they had unbelievable character as well, and that's what's been seriously lacking. I think that real character, that was maybe the standout moment. I would think it'd probably go down, maybe I think Wenger would probably reflect upon that as maybe his best moment here at Old Trafford too, I would say.
Yeah, it's been a while. It has been a while since he's had one of those moments at Old Trafford. Daniel Harris, good morning to you. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Good morning.
Yeah, so let's take a moment to reflect on the end of Wenger at Old Trafford. The stats that Sky Sports News had going this morning in terms of his record there were pretty appalling. I mean, almost relegation form over the course of something like 23 games or 22 games. Why was it so calm and peaceful and pleasant? Is it simply because, as Wenger pointed out, that he was no longer a threat to them and hasn't been for the best part of a decade?
I wondered if when Wenger said he's no longer a threat, he meant I'm no longer a threat because my team are no good, or I'm no longer a threat because I'm leaving. I felt like he might have meant the latter one, and everyone sort of took it to mean the former, because that's certainly when his relationship with Fergie relaxed, once he was no longer a threat. I think the reason why it was so anodyne yesterday is partly because Wenger is a gentleman of football who has done some brilliant things, not for a long time, but has done some brilliant things, and generally, not all the time, but conducted himself in a manner that you can get behind in one way or another. Whether it was the nastiness you can get behind as a football supporter because that edge is amazing, it's an amazing part of the game, or if it was generally the way that he conducted himself afterwards, he was interesting, he was thoughtful, he was different. And to me, as someone who's watched football, the only real black mark on Wenger's copybook is trying to buy Luis Suarez immediately after the Patrice Evra situation. So he's quite an easy person to get behind. Also, the game itself, there was nothing riding on it. He was busy resting players for the Europa League. United knew that they were going to finish in the top four, so there was no needle there. So it was quite easy for everyone to appreciate him.
What are your worst memories of Arsene Wenger at Old Trafford, as somebody who counts himself as a Manchester United fan? At what point did you actually kind of feel genuine fear about the quality of the team that he was bringing? And if not fear, at least that kind of sense that there's a good chance the team are going to win today?
Oh, it's definitely never fear, but from 1997 until the cup final in 2005, as far as I can see, that's the greatest rivalry in the history of British football. That there have never been two such good teams that have hit a concurrent peak. You had Liverpool and Nottingham Forest at the end of the 70s, who were two great teams, but they never really actually contested the title. Like, they were busy winning European Cups, but they never duked it out in quite the same way that United and Arsenal did. And United and Arsenal did it season after season after season. So when those games were coming up, you were always thrilled, excited, nervous, and you're never quite sure what you were going to see, because I think one of the great elements to that rivalry was the needle. It wasn't just about the football, which was of an amazingly high standard. It was just something's going to go off, you don't know what it's going to be, and that's part of the edge that makes football so compelling and confrontational, and why we have the atmosphere at football that you don't really get other sports.
What's most remarkable to me is that edge existed during Arsenal's most compelling period under Arsene Wenger, and he never really sought to replace it in a meaningful way. He never looked for the successor to that spine of players who you knew would leave their opponents feeling sore physically the next day. It was like, I don't understand why his team decided that they were going to be a team who only wanted to play football but not get involved in the fight.
I totally agree with that, and I think it even extends further than that. That if you compare Fergie and Wenger, which is, I guess, what we're doing in a way, is one of the reasons why Fergie was able to sustain his success and Wenger didn't, is that Fergie was always busy rotating assistants. He'd get in Carlos Queiroz, we had Brian Kidd, he had Jim Ryan, he had all sorts of different people, because he was listening to different ideas about ways of doing things, because he didn't think that he was an expert in everything. So when he wasn't sitting there, for example, watching Spartak Moscow thinking, yeah, this Vidic lad is a good player, he was sitting there with his wine watching the History Channel or whatever it is he does, because he knew that he didn't know everything about picking defenders, about organising defences. So he trusted himself to pick good people to delegate, who would then go about their job, and he would then sit at the top and say yes or no to signing players, or yes or no, that's the way I want the team to play. Whereas Wenger seemed to have to do everything himself, all the scouting, all the buying of players, all the coaching, everything that happened was him. And to be able to do that, I mean, no one's really able to do that in such an intense manner. Like you see Pep Guardiola, like he does 3 or 4 years and then he leaves, because I think he's another guy who wants to do everything himself, and it's quite hard to do. And what you saw with Wenger is that it's not just the physical element to his teams that you were talking about, although that is important. It's also, he seemed to forget that you need to be able to run fast to play football. Because I remember standing there watching games, United against Arsenal, and you'd see the same game over and over again, where he had Alexander Kleb and Thomas Rosicky and Cesc Fabregas and all these players who are all lovely footballers, but they move the ball forwards and sideways. There's no one who's going to run around the outside. There's no one who's going to run in behind. Robin van Persie, another one, brilliant player, but he didn't have any pace. And so for what you knew how Arsenal were going to play, they were going to try and pass the ball. Now they're going to generally have to pass their way through the middle of your defence. So if you have good defenders and good midfield players, that is very difficult to do. Whereas Wenger's great teams, they had Overmars, who was a direct player. They had Ray Parler, a direct player, and Nelka. If you lose the ball to those guys, then you've got a problem, because whatever they're going to do, they're going to do very, very quickly. And Wenger seemed to forget that that was what brought him success when he had financial constraints that limited who he was able to sign. And the way that Fergie got around that was he bought lots and lots of strikers and wingers, different kinds of attacking players who will get around the fact that you don't have as much class as you once did with options. And Wenger didn't do any of that.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense. That, like, when you talk about the pace that was in the team, Thierry Henry obviously had a lot of pace. He went away from the principles which made the team successful, and then kind of refined his principles to be something which were actually very different to what they were in the first place. It's not that it's not that he did the same thing the whole way through. It was actually that he went away from the things that made him successful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, football, so I say it's a lot, football's a simple game. And so people talk about the game develops and the game moves on, and it does. But if you took a successful team in any era, you could put them in, you took a successful team from any period of time, put them in another era, and if they were a really good team, they'd be able to look after themselves. And so you don't really need to change all that much, even though the game changes in terms of fashion. So people say, like, Wenger's football never went out of fashion. It's just his ability to play Wenger football changed, partly because he didn't have the money to sign the good players that he once had, partly because he didn't have a free run at the French market anymore because everyone was all over the place doing everything, and I think they were probably a bit slow to move. But it wasn't that I don't feel like it was particularly because the game moved on and left him behind. In the same way that people say this about Mourinho, the game's moved on, there's all these more modern coaches. I'm still sure that if you took that Chelsea team with John Terry and Carvalho and Cech and Lampard and Drogba and you stuck them in the Premier League right now, they'd have a pretty good run at trying to win that. And I think it's that what constitutes good football doesn't really change that much, but Wenger's ability to deliver it changed for all the reasons that we've been talking about.
Which is why yesterday was the perfect ending to Wenger's relationship with Old Trafford as the Arsenal manager. If he's back there in some other capacity in the future, who knows? But a late-headed winner from Aaron Fellaini, who was a sub in proper Fergie time. You could have scripted that and everybody would have said, nah, that's not going to happen.
It was interesting with Fellaini because everyone had previously thought Fellaini was going to leave. And based on what Mourinho said afterwards, it now looks like Fellaini's going to stay. And if you use Fellaini in the way that he used him yesterday, I don't think anyone would have too much of a problem with that. That is a different option. No one wants to defend against that kind of thing, and he's quite hard to beat in the air. I think the problem with Fellaini is that Mourinho likes him because he does what he's told, and you know roughly how he's going to play. And Mourinho's another. He's a control freak. He likes certainty. He doesn't like the chaos of a game of football, even though football is really quite a chaotic endeavour. And so the problem with Mourinho and Fellaini is that Mourinho will probably end up picking Fellaini in occasions when he shouldn't, in the way that, so when United were at home to Sevilla in a game they needed to win, Fellaini hadn't played for 3 months and he'd been injured, he stuck Fellaini and left Pogba on the bench. And that's the problem with Mourinho, I think, who is inherently a conservative, and with a small C, but maybe with a big C as well. Let's be honest. Who is a conservative, so he likes that certainty of knowing what you're going to get from someone like Fellaini. And I think his desire to play Fellaini extends beyond let's put some decent crosses in the box and see what he can deliver. But he did it yesterday very well.